welcome back, welcome back. We turn now to Iraq. The private security firm Blackwater of the USA, who are paid more than the US Army to protect US civilian workers in Iraq, was involved in a deadly shootout last month, leaving 11 Iraqis dead. The incident is not necessarily the first one involving the security firm, and this week its boss faced a tough grilling from a US congressional committee. The firm was called a shadow mercenary force by a member of the committee, while the firm's founder called its actions appropriate and its staff brave and effective. Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki demanded that Blackwater personnel should leave his country. Joining me today is Dr. Salah al-Shaikhly, the Iraqi ambassador here in the UK. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much today.
Do you still hope that Blackwater will leave Iraq? I mean, because at the same time I noticed that there was a quote here that Americans saying that it would leave a security vacuum without Blackwater. What do you think? Well,
I think their behavior has been absolutely unacceptable in the circumstance, because after all, whatever else they're doing, they are guests and they have to obey the rules and regulations of the country. I think they have overstepped, and my government feels that they have overstepped their terms of reference. They have used unnecessary force into combating innocent civilians. And when I've just come back 3 weeks ago from Baghdad, when you see these people running around Baghdad, there is a huge sign that's saying, if you come within 100 yards of this car, you will meet with a deadly force. And this is really not acceptable to many. And this is really what riles people up. And over and above what we have in the country of the tense situation, we don't need people like these. I mean, yes, we like to, you know, security firms are necessary, bodyguards are necessary in the circumstances, but they have to obey the local rules and regulations.
And yes, because there are, in fact, what, at least, according to figures, there are at least 27 other security firms who are presumably behaving better, or maybe they will be looked at next.
Well, we will be needing them until such time as our security forces are ready to take over. Let's not forget, what happened in Iraq wasn't just a regime change, it was a collapse of the state of Iraq, and consequently the collapse of all the infrastructure, like the army, the security forces, and what have you. And until such time we have these security apparatus in place, we need something else to buttress our security situation. And we have fallen onto, as a fallback position, we have taken in these security firms, people coming and going into Iraq. They take a good charge of them. But unfortunately, these people, because they went such a long time unchecked, they have overstepped their terms of duty.
But there will be security people there for years to come, won't there?
Well, indeed. I don't know for years to come. Perhaps in the next 3-4 years, yes. Gradually, we are building up our police forces. We're building our security forces. We have other forces that take charge of the ministerial buildings and other installations in Iraq. But gradually, they are being replaced by Iraqi police. The people who, when we were in Baghdad a couple of weeks ago, who met us at the airport and who took us to the ministry, back again, looked after us as ambassadors, they were all Iraqi forces, trained by people like the security firm you were talking about. But they were Iraqis through and through, and at least you can communicate and negotiate with them.
Absolutely. The announcement this week that Prime Minister Gordon Brown was withdrawing 1,000 troops from Iraq caused a lot of controversy, because some people said that's already taken care of and he's just announcing it all again, and 250 here and so on and so forth. But does it matter to Iraq that we withdraw 1,000 troops either before the announcement or after the announcement?
Well, what I'm glad to say is that the British commitment to Iraq continues. My Minister of Foreign Affairs is in town, and we have been to see the Foreign Secretary, the British Foreign Secretary, and even met the Prime Minister. And he reiterated the British commitment to Iraq. What I want to say also that it isn't the number, is the commitment that counts. And so long as there is a token presence of British forces in the Basra airport, for example, that would give a message to not only to the insurgents in Iraq, but also to the neighboring countries, which is very, very important, that we are not being left alone for other rather unfriendly and unsavory forces from outside Iraq to come in and meddle in our affairs. And so the commitment is there, and I think the Prime Minister would give a statement to that effect in the Parliament next week.
Yes, because on the other hand, of course, the Americans thought it was necessary to bring in a surge, to actually bring in more numbers of their troops, which may have worked partially.
It worked, in fact, extremely well. The area where the British were, actually, there were no activity, no terrorist activity as such. The problem in the Basra area was like a conflict of interest between the various political grouping. There were no insurgents from outside. In Baghdad itself, there was the Al-Qaeda and the fundamentalist Islamists and others, and these, it was absolutely necessary for the surge, and it worked. For the first time, I was able, recently in Baghdad, to walk around in areas where you couldn't. For the first time, you could see merchandise in shops. You could see little boys playing football in the street. And this is really the kind of effect the surge had on the streets in Baghdad, which is really quite gratifying in a way. And it should have been done earlier on.
Yes, absolutely. In the Basra area, how much of a worry is Iran or Iranian involvement?
It is a great worry, in fact, and it is in more than one area. It is well documented, the Iranian involvement in the Basra area. This is not my view. My foreign minister has said it more than once. Other Iraqi officials have said it. Officials who have been on the ground in Basra have got, by now, documentary evidence of the involvement. It is worrying, but it is part of the overall regional balance. And as you probably know, Iran has a nuclear program, and this creates a problem for Britain, United States, international community. And I think there are checks and balances, and we Iraqis have fallen victim to that. And really what I would like to say at this point, that we wouldn't like the Iraqi theater to be used as a ground to settle other people's account.
Right. And in terms of the future, what do you see as the situation? Because one or two of the things you said today indicate that you think things are definitely getting better.
We
do
are
you
sure.
really think that?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I mean, obviously, it isn't getting better as fast as we would like them to, but the things that are not being flagged out in the media is how much economic progress outside of Baghdad is being made in the country. I mean, very few people would know, for example, that our rate of economic growth at present is over 7%, which is really quite an achievement in a situation where the only picture you have in the Western media is car bombs and killings. The area like the Iraqi Kurdistan is flourishing at any one time. There are $6–7 billion of work going on around the clock. So there's quite a lot of positive things happening. And I think as a matter of time, as I said earlier, once you have a collapsed state, you need time to bring it out. And 4 years really is no time in a life of a country or a nation.
Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Sir David.
Absolutely delightful to have that update from you.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Time now for a new feature on Frost Over the World. The US presidential elections are still more than a year away, but as you've no doubt noticed, the campaigns are already in full swing. And for the first time in more than 50 years, no former president nor vice president looks like running. That is, unless Dick Cheney shocks everyone and throws his duck-shooting hat into the ring. He'd probably miss if he did it anyway. Which means that there are a host of new players jostling for influence inside the beltway of Washington. So every month between now and next November, we'll be introducing you to some of the new movers and shakers around American politics. Our first little Penn portrait is fittingly enough of Mr. Penn, Mark Penn to be exact, at 53, the biggest beast in the Democratic Party's polling circles right now. Strategist to the current favourite, Hillary Clinton, his advice is driving this campaign. He not only has to boost Hillary, of course, but politely to poor-mouth her rivals as well. So where did Mr. Penn spring from? Well, he's an old friend of the family, having advised Bill Clinton during his first presidential campaign, spotting the soccer moms whose support was to prove crucial to Bill. Mark went on to advise Tony Blair during his last election campaign, and when he's not electioneering, Mark Penn has a raft of other jobs to do. He's a multi-millionaire businessman as chief executive of the PR company Burson Marsteller, and Mr. Penn is no slouch with the pen either. He's just written a new book, Micro Trends, which catalogues the small but influential niche groups in America. One of his more startling findings was that 1% of all Californian boys expect to become snipers. Comparisons between Mark Penn and George Bush's top advisor, Karl Rove, are flooding the US press. It remains to be seen whether, like Mr. Rove before him, Mark Penn gets a job in the White House after the election. Maybe he'll think he can't afford to do it. But anyway, whether Hillary wins or loses, one thing is fairly certain. We haven't heard the last of Mark Penn. Meet more significant players, including supermodel Murray Helvin, and an analysis of the Ukraine's post-election power struggle after the news, which is next.